Chess Training and Transitions Committee Google On Air Hangout. This is a beta test that we're doing just to see kind of how things go, and we thought we would start off by talking about work-life balance. We have three terrific discussants today, and then me. And we'll go ahead and do introductions here for a moment. So I'll start off. I'm Gabe Bosslet. I am the program director for the Pulmonary and Critical Care Fellowship at Indiana University. I spend most of my academic and clinical time seeing patients with advanced neuromuscular diseases, running our Pulmonary Critical Care Fellowships, and then teaching physicians communication skills. So I run communication skills courses here at IU for faculty, residents, and fellows. When I'm not in the hospital, I have a family. I have a wife who's a pediatrician, and I have 4 children. My twin sons are 11. I have a daughter who's 7 and a son who is 2, who is going on 30. We also just recently adopted a golden doodle, 12-week-old golden doodle. And so I'm usually, if I'm not with my family, I'm cleaning up pee or poop. So I'll turn it over to Subani. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Subani Chandra. I am at Columbia University in New York, and I am a pulmonary critical care and sleep physician and also an educator with an interest in education, innovation, and outcomes. And I get to indulge in that in my dual roles as Director of Critical Care Education at Columbia and as an Associate Program Director for our internal medicine residency program. And outside of work, I also spend a lot of time with my family and my 2 little kids.
All right, I'll go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Tapyrik. I am at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. I am the Associate Fellowship Program Director here and have been having a lot of fun working with our fellows in the couple years I've been doing this. My clinical interests are a lot around mycobacterial disease, pulmonary infections, and so I see a lot of our immigrant patients in our outpatient clinics regarding that. I also do a lot with our medical students on the mentoring side of things, and also I run a course to prep them for their intern year. Outside of work, my family, I have a fur baby. I have an awesome yellow lab. I enjoy training him. We are currently competing in dog agility, so that's been super fun. That's it.
I'm Dave Schulman. I'm also competing in dog agility, but I don't know what that is. So I'm the Southern representative here. I'm Dave Schulman. I was the program director down at Emory University in Atlanta. It is 65 here in February, so that's kind of a thing. So when I'm not a program director, which I am all the time, but when I'm doing other things, my clinical practice is in the area of sleep medicine, also very involved in undergraduate medical education. So I'll leave it at that and hand it back to Gabe.
Wonderful. Thank you guys very much for the wonderful introductions. So for those of you joining us on YouTube, we're going to have a series of 4 questions for the discussants regarding sort of work-life balance and how they balance their life inside the hospital and outside the hospital when they're trying to manage their careers. And as you're watching on YouTube, you can feel free, if you log into YouTube, you can feel free to put in the comments any questions that you'd like to ask the discussants, and we will try to answer them after we're done with our questions. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first question, if that's cool. So we'll start with you, Subani. So what responsibilities and activities do you enjoy outside of work, and how do you balance them with your job?
Okay, so the first part of that question is easy. I'm a mom, so I have 2 little kids in that. So my kids and my family are my primary responsibility outside of work, and they're a full-time responsibility. The balance is trickier. I think I try and figure it out and evolve, and where I think that balance falls as time goes by. I do try to be very present in the moment. So when I'm at work, I do try to focus completely and tune out other things as much as possible. And same thing when I'm with my kids. I try to be with them. So I'm one of those few people who is luckily not addicted to checking email every minute to 2 minutes or texting all the time. So
I gotta do it real quick. Hold on. Okay.
that helps. So that helps. It doesn't always work perfectly, but I do try. And so I think I'm successful more often than I would be otherwise.
Great. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I bought an old home. So a lot of my responsibilities outside of work are maintaining and doing renovations to my house. And so that requires a lot of organization. And I also enjoy doing things, you know, working out and traveling, things like that. So I think when I'm outside of work, just kind of have to, you know, prioritize those activities then. I also found it sometimes hard to just completely compartmentalize. So I think trying to be flexible as much as I can with my schedule. Certainly when I'm in an inpatient service, things are a lot harder. But some of my off-service time, I try to take advantage of maybe being able to work from home so I can get other things done at home too, and just trying to be as creative and flexible as I can with my schedule in order to fit everything in.
Great, Sarah. Dave, how about you? How do you balance things?
So I'm at a point in my life, I think I'm the senior member of the committee here. I'm at a point in my life where my job fortunately allows me to be a little bit more flexible with things. I don't do a lot of critical care time. And so I think I have fewer challenges than you guys do. Let me rewind the clock a little bit. I think when I was younger and I did have a lot of critical care time, and certainly for most of our fellows, that's kind of an issue. I think it is a challenge. And sometimes you do have to make some tough choices. There's some upcoming questions where I'll talk a little bit about prioritizing. These days, though, I think it's important to work hard, play hard. When I work hard. I don't have a lot of downtime during the day because I'm juggling a lot of different things, but that allows me to be present when I'm home. And I think that's critically important because I think a lot of the mistakes that people make, and Subani hit on this nicely, and I think Sarah intimated it also, is that people tend to take their work home with them. I think it's critical when you're with your family to be present with your family, and it's all too easy for us to drift back, check our email. And so my counsel on this piece about balancing things is balance it by doing work here, play here, but try not to let them cross too much, because I think your family notices when you're not all there.
Yeah, great. And I agree. I mean, if I look at the things that I try to do in order to balance, when I was a younger faculty member several years ago, I did a lot of work at home, and I try not to do that anymore. I really try to get my work done during the day. For example, if I have clinic, my clinic notes are done before I leave clinic. If there are tasks I need to get done during the day, those tasks are done. And if I don't get them done, they're put aside for the next day. And when I get home, no longer is it where I'll work on a manuscript after my kids go to bed. I really, I have a certain amount of time in the evening where it's dinner time, kid time, and then bedtime. And then the time after that is time to unwind with my wife, help with chores around the house. So she's, we went through a time where I was trying to do a lot at home and it just doesn't work at all. Same with the weekends. If I'm not on service on the weekend, I don't do any work. And people know that they usually won't get emails from me on the weekend unless I'm on that weekend. So that's how I try to sort of manage things. What are some of those other things? We'll start with you, Sarah. What are some of those other things, those little tips and tricks, those sort of really nuts and bolts things that you found helpful in balancing for yourself?
So I think one thing for me, because initially I really tried to keep non-work stuff completely separate from work things, and that included, this sounds silly, but 2 totally separate calendars. So I had my work calendar with all my work stuff, and then I had my Google Calendar with all my personal stuff, which was fine, but then I was constantly checking 2 calendars and overscheduling and missing things. And so I just put it all on the same calendar now, and that has helped so much. And I think that, you still have your I think even one of my medical students told me, he's like, it's not so much a balance. I mean, because your work is part of your life too. So, for me, it's fine if people at work know I'm going to get a haircut at 4 o'clock, like if it's on that calendar. So for me, putting everything on one calendar really helped me to schedule things better and keep it all in one place. So I didn't forget things or lose out on things. And that was able to keep me on track more.
That's great. I think it's super important to keep the calendar kind of where it needs to be. One of the difficulties that I've had with my wife is that my calendar at work, my Outlook calendar, will not sync with Google Calendar. So we have a family Google Calendar, and I'm not able to push my work events onto that calendar. So the workaround we've had to come up with is on Sunday night, my wife and I do what we call summiting, where we literally sit down, go through our calendars for the week, and decide who's picking up the kids, who's dropping off the kids, and how are we going to manage things for, we usually go through 2 weeks. And boy, it's kind of a drag to have to do. It's like a half-hour thing every week. Usually we do it on Sunday, but sometimes it drags over to Monday. But boy, in keeping things organized for the family, it's been hugely important. So, you know, she's a pediatrician. She's busy. She's active in the American Academy of Pediatrics. And so she has a lot of meetings in the morning. So sometimes we'll have competing meetings and have to decide, okay, I'll skip my meeting or you'll skip yours, or I'll call in so we can do the kids. And the summit's been important. The second thing that I've done that is a real nuts and bolts thing for me, that was a real eye opener, was I've taken my email off of my phone. That's been huge. It's hard to do. With iPhones, you can turn it on and off somewhat easily. So if I'm in an airport and I have an hour and my computer's not available, I may turn it on, but I make myself turn it off immediately, literally, so my emails will not be accessible in my phone. And that's allowed me to be a lot more present at home when I'm standing there cooking dinner. It used to be that I would be checking my email on my phone and my kids are talking to me, and that's a terrible way to spend my time. So how about you, Dave? So I'm gonna use a quote that I really love, which is that a priority isn't a priority unless you prioritize. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if you guys are hearing that. So I make lists. I'm a very organized, maybe a little OCD kind of guy. And so I do make lists, and I decide what are the important things I want to hit on and what I'm willing to put. I mean, you know, you have a limited number of resources, right? You have time, you have money, and you have to deploy those things in a way that's going to make you happy. And so if I find things on my list that are priorities, or at least I deem to be priorities, but they're not kind of getting up to a point where I can spend time, I have to clearly reconfigure. And you have to learn to say no to some things. I think fellows, young faculty in particular, struggle a lot with this. And you want to be a yes person. You want to be a team player. You want to do things that can advance your career. You want to do things that are fun. I get that. But you also need to make sure that you haven't oversubscribed yourself to the point that you're going to deprioritize things that you consider priorities. So my biggest counsel, and this is something that comes from my boss, when he says, look, every year, every couple of years, write down all the stuff you do and take a long, hard look at it, maybe the following day, and decide what are the things that you want to do more of, what are the things you want to do less of, and make the ask. Because I think that's the best way to ensure that you're getting a good work-life balance, is don't put too much on your plate that you can't swallow. Great. How about you, Subani?
Yeah, I think I echo what everybody else is saying, and this theme of staying organized, that's a game changer, because any week where I don't make that list, or even a day, especially if it's a day where I'm not on a clinical service, I'm not rounding in the ICU, and it's kind of like catch-up day, whether it be with email or stuff, if I make that list, I never get to the end of the list, but I get further than I would without that list. Same thing actually even for off time or family time. If I plan the weekend, even if it's, okay, we'll get out and go to the zoo, it's much more likely to happen. Otherwise, by the time everybody gets their act together, half the day is gone. So that is, that's been really, really helpful. One of the things that I put on the list is make lists. And then as soon as I'm done, I can check it off. It's such a satisfying feeling. So I feel like, you know, it's a little bit of positive reinforcement that I've already started my day off on a good note. I think the other kind of, I don't know if it's a tip or more like a conversation with oneself, is that it's okay, I think, to not be perfect. It doesn't mean that you have to do a bad job at things. It still means that, at least for me, that I hold myself to a high standard. But I think it's kind of that saying of don't let you know, perfection be the enemy of the good, and you kind of have to think about your priorities and where it's very important to be perfect or close to it, and where it may be okay. So if the bed isn't made one morning, that's okay, you know. that's acceptable. So that's my own evolution in life, I think.
Wow, Subani, I don't think my bed has ever been made.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Gabe, can I ask a point of clarification? If Subani, if you actually put making lists on a list, if that's true, that's very meta and that's very awesome.
There is actually a word for it. I have to find it. There is a word for the satisfaction that you get from scratching something off a list is done. So I get that right away.
So wait, so have any of you guys heard of bullet journaling?
No.
No.
All right. So when we're done here, everyone who's watching on YouTube, you guys go to bulletjournal.com. There's a 4-minute video, and that's the other thing that I do to sort of manage my life is I bullet journal. It's a great way to sort of manage your list. It's a bit of an analog way to do it. So if you're an iPhone person who likes to see things in notes or in reminders on iPhone, that's not the way to do it. But let's see here. I'm a Moleskine person. So if you're a Moleskine person, then this is kind of the way to go. So great. So Dave, we'll start with you on this one. What type of things do you do outside the hospital? How do you de-stress? What are the things you do to de-stress?
So maybe this is inappropriate for a 45-year-old guy to say, but I am a video game player. My sons are now old enough to do that. So I have a 13 and a 16-year-old. I haven't spent a lot of time talking about them yet. They're both very athletic, very different from their father, who never had a figure, but let it get even worse as he got older. But the things that we do together now, we can actually play games together, which is awesome. And so it's a rare pleasure for me to go home. They have a lot of homework, of course, but on the weekends, certainly once they're done for the evening, it's a rare pleasure to kind of hang out, spend time with them, and talk to them like men because they're turning into great kids. I probably wasn't as good a dad as I should have been when they were little, but I think as they've gotten older, I've become a better father and really enjoy spending time with them.
What games do you play?
That's my way of doing it. What's that?
What games?
Oh, so the big one that we play together, this is maybe a little old school, is Rock Band. I don't know if you guys have played this. I don't want to. First of all, we're not sponsored by Harmonix, so please don't. For those of you on YouTube, this is this is a conflict of interest disclosure. But it's great. It's non-violent. Everyone likes the music. We put a lot of 80s and 90s music in there. But my kids are now big fans of 80s and 90s music that they would have no reason to know any other way except they play it with their dad on video game night. So it's awesome.
Excellent.
That is excellent. Subani, how about you? How do you de-stress?
So I think that's, an easy option for me is really when I come home and my 2 little girls come barreling down the hallway to give me a big hug. I think that's one of my favorite moments in the day. And then, that same theme of, I think, being present mentally, even if we get 15 minutes in the evening with my kids of really being present. And one thing I've started doing lately is with my 6-year-old, when I tuck her in at night, I just sit on her bed and we chat for 5-10 minutes. And those are, I think, conversations that I will probably remember forever because she tells me things that I didn't even know she knew or was thinking about. And it's really amazing. And it's amazing for perspective on life, the way a kid thinks about things. I think that keeps me grounded. I have wonderful friends, and I think I'm very lucky at work to have a group of colleagues who are at a similar stage in life, career-wise and personal life-wise. And so we really understand each other. We always help each other out. And I think outside of patient care, knowing that that support system exists is really, really helpful. And then one thing that I've started doing lately, de-stressing from like patient care stuff, because there's a lot of that in the ICU, and I spend a good amount of my clinical time in the ICU, is cherishing even those positive moments with patients or families, and thinking about them. Again, like sometimes on my commute back home, if a patient's family member gave me a hug and said thank you, I think even if I take 5 seconds and think about that moment, it kind of ends my day or my clinical day on a different note. So I find that very, de-stressing.
Great. I think for me, the way that I de-stress, I think I do 2-3 things. So I read. I read every night before bed for probably half an hour, something generally non-medical, sometimes fiction, sometimes nonfiction, but it helps me just to sort of calm my mind before I get into bed. I run, so I've recently gotten back into training for a half marathon in May, which I've wanted to do again for a while, and making sure I'm prioritizing that has been helpful for me. So again, it goes in my bullet journal. It goes on my list. I have a training calendar, and that helps me kind of stick with my running so that I prioritize it. So when I sit down and submit with my wife on Sundays, I'll map out, okay, am I going to run in the morning before work or after work on these days, so that I make sure I get the runs in. And the last thing that I've been trying to do recently, because I've read several books on it, is I've been trying to meditate just for a few minutes a day. I found it really calming. It really helps me, even in stressful situations, to sort of be able to deal a little bit better. There's a great book that just came out called Attending by Ron Epstein. It's attending medicine, mindfulness, and meditation. And it's all about how sort of mindfulness can help us in our everyday practice of medicine. It's a great book if anyone wants to read it. But I've been trying to do 5 minutes of meditation per day, usually just in my office after I've done kind of intensive tasks. So those are the things that I do to try to sort of calm down and keep things in priority. How about you, Sarah?
So I think a lot of things are going to echo a couple things that you guys have said. I think certainly talking to colleagues and friends and family is definitely a big outlet for stressful things. For me, when I'm done with work, I need to get home, I need to get outside, and I need to go for a walk. I need to walk the dog, I need to get some fresh air, and that really helps me calm down and relax. Exercise in general. And Gabe, I guess this echoes what you just said too, but getting more organized, whether it's with your lists or with your calendar. I've joined a swim team. I've been able to get my early morning swim practices in. That's really helped. I've trained for triathlons now, despite having a busy ICU schedule. You just need to be really good at scheduling that in and making sure, and then you get up and you go to work out and you just feel so much better for that day. If I went to swim practice before I go and round in the ICU, so that has helped a lot. And I think music is awesome. Blasting your music when you drive home. I have come into my office and just listened to music and maybe even danced a little bit when I shut the blinds in my office to de-stress if it's a really bad day. It's amazing what music can do. So I think just making sure you stay true to yourself and things that you love to do, don't let those go.
Great, thank you. A reminder to anybody watching on YouTube to feel free to post a question in the comments if you like. We have one more question, and then that we'll sort of go through quickly, and then if there's any questions out there, we can answer them. If not, I have a couple other ones. Subani, I think you were going to ask this one.
So, Gabe, a recent article shared that soon first-year residents may be asked to work 28-hour shifts again. So what advice would you give to these residents? Want to start, Gabe?
That's a hard question. I did this. I think most of us probably did this as residents and interns. I still do this occasionally. So we still do nights here at IU. The faculty will do a night or two a month. On occasion, our fellows do a couple. This is hard. I mean, because it becomes the day's gone, right? So like right now, I wouldn't be able to run on that day. So I'd have to plan ahead to make sure I get my runs in on other days. I think that the days that I am working overnight, I try to make a couple phone calls home before my kids go to bed to say hey and to just check in from afar. Now with FaceTime and stuff, I can even see my 2-year-old and say hi so that he gets to see me as well. The other thing that I tell people is that it ends. Residency is only so long, and those 28-hour shifts are difficult, but in my opinion are probably needed to be able to really learn how to practice good medicine in the hospital. And so just remember that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. How about you, Subani?
I think it is tricky because I don't know that there is any one trick that universally works for everyone, because everyone handles lack of sleep so differently. I do find that, and I recall this from my own experience, and I will still occasionally do a night here and there. And I also see this in residents. There's something about 2, 3 a.m., 20 something hours into the shift when you start to kind of hit a wall. So if you can, I think it's very helpful, even 10 minutes of, close your eyes, even if it's in the chair at the nursing station. But ideally, if you can get away and lie down, and then get some caffeine and get going again. People advised, strategic napping and napping in the afternoon before. I personally could never really pull that off. I found it difficult even to put that time aside and say, okay, I'm going to take a half an hour strategic nap from 3 to 3:30 p.m. It just, I don't know if any of you are able to pull that off. And yeah, it ends sometimes, though, like you're saying, faculty sometimes still do a night here or there, but you get more choice. You get to pick which night you're working, more or less, and it's not Q4. So that does make a big difference, or a week of nights.
Great. Sarah, any advice?
I also think it's a really hard question too, because it gets to, I think this could be just a whole nother probably session topic on things too. What's the best way to train to be a doctor and learn medicine and things. But if, I still had to work that too when, these really long shifts. And I think individually, you kind of need to figure out what's going to work for you, whether it's more caffeine or more naps. But when I look back on the nights I worked in the 28 plus hour shifts as a resident too, I remember that I knew those patients so well in every detail. And I didn't train in this current system of handoffs, but on the faculty side of things, there's a lot less ownership of patients, and that was actually kind of rewarding to me. So I guess advice I'd give now is to try to embrace it when you can, because you're going to know that patient better than anyone, and the night will end. You will get to go home. So if, it's not really going to be able to change the fact that you have to work that. So I guess try to come up with how you can cope with it the best, and then, take the best care of patients you can and embrace getting to know them. Dave?
How about you, Dave?
So funnily enough, I actually wrote something on this topic. Here it is. I don't know if it comes off backwards. It says sleep. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if it's mirror image or not, but y'all don't get enough sleep. The best, so this is what I do for a living. So of course I'm passionate about this, but the best treatment or to survive a 28-hour shift is to make sure you're not going in sleep deprived. And the reality is most young adults are. If you think you're getting by on less than 6 hours a night and you're doing good, I got news for you. You're wrong. You ain't doing good. And certainly there's nothing that's going to destabilize a sleep deprived person already than acute sleep deprivation. So please, y'all, make sure you're getting, there's my Southern, you see that, y'all? Make sure you're getting at least 8 hours of sleep in the night leading into that, if nothing else. I think Subani's idea about strategic napping, there's some data on that. If you can figure out how to get somebody to cover your pager for half an hour, that little nap helps far more, and it'll last you 4 hours after that. So we all did it. It wasn't a lot of fun, but we survived it. You can survive it too, but do make sure you're going in not sleep deprived. That's, I think, a big thing.
Wow, that's great. Dave, how much sleep do you get on an average night?
You don't really want me to answer that question. Actually, I've been doing better of late. I'm up to probably 6.5 to 7 hours. As y'all will learn when you get older, and Gabe, you shaved it. Mine's just come out. It's hard to sleep in. I miss remember when we were teenagers, we could sleep in till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock on the weekends. I can't do that anymore. I can't sleep past 6. It's terrible.
Well, that's great. So I have one question actually that I'm going to throw out to the group quickly, because Dave, you mentioned saying no earlier, and I think that's an important skill to have. How do you say no? What do you say? Because as a young faculty member, you're eager, and that usually the things that are off thrown your way are things you're interested in. How do you say no to people that you respect who are asking you to do things who you may not want to say no to?
I mean, certainly there's some diplomacy to it, right? I think I've said no at this point a lot more than I did 5 or 10 years ago. But I think don't say no to something that you want to do unless you absolutely can't fit it in. But we all sometimes say yes to things that we don't want to do because we're trying to be team players. And I think you want to look at if the division or the department needs you to do something, make an effort to do it. But the problem is that, you know, 20% of people do 80% of the work. And I'm talking to the 20%. Hopefully the other 20% are listening. You know, we're the folks who get called because we produce. We do things on time. We agree to do. But at some point, you have to start saying no. And so my advice is to use something like, hey, look, I really appreciate the offer. Thanks so much for thinking of me. I just don't know that I can fit this in my schedule right now, and I don't want to disappoint by producing a product that's less optimal than I'm capable of or late, because I know that's a big thing. And offer them, say, look, feel free to come back around to me if you can't shop this anywhere else, but I think it's probably best for both of us if I take a pass on this opportunity. Something like that. That seems right.
Sarah or Subani, do you guys have other tips or tricks for saying no?
Oh my gosh, I mean, I struggle with this all the time, you know. I think that one of the things I am starting to do better is truly asking what kind of commitment something will take when people ask me to do something. Because very often it's kind of this nebulous, oh, will you be part of this or part of that? And what does that really mean? And being very honest and upfront that will help me make sure that I can actually do the job that I'm being asked to do in a manner that would make everybody pleased and happy and be productive. So truly asking, and sometimes it forces whoever's asking you to actually think about what they really need. Every now and then, if it's kind of this casual, oh, can you come to this, or can you be part of this committee? Sometimes it fizzles out because they haven't thought through all the operational steps. And when it doesn't, then you have a better understanding of what it is that your role is. And then I think the time, even if you end up saying yes, that time is more productive. It doesn't always work, but it works better than, I think, not asking.
I think the best piece of advice that I got when I was a resident was from a guy who was actually at The Ohio State University named Steve Hoffman, who said, the best way to get ahead is to say you're going to do something and then do it. And so, I think this echoes what you said, Dave. I do the same. I say, gosh, I just don't have the time to give that the attention that it would need to make it something worth you having me do. And so I think I think that, Dave, the way that you approach it is about the way that I say no as well. And it's something that I do quite often now that I didn't do nearly enough in the first couple of years as a faculty member. Anybody have any closing thoughts, you guys?
Can I make a follow-up to that real quick, and then I want to pass it because I haven't heard from Sarah in a little bit. Get off a committee that you're on that's not doing anything. We all sit on way too many committees, have way too many meetings. Yes. And Subani kind of hinted at committees. If you're at a committee and you can't explain what that committee does in one sentence, get the heck off that committee, because it's probably doing something illegal, immoral, or just not doing anything at all. And so I think
that last point there, not anything at all. So many committees do nothing. Not this one, of course, but.
So not only is it important to say no, it's important to be able to dump things that you're doing that you probably shouldn't be doing anymore.
Great. Well, you guys, I think that'll sort of wrap things up. We're at about a half an hour. I want to thank everybody who's watching on YouTube for joining us. Certainly, if you have thoughts about things that would be good topics for future Google On Air Hangouts, please let us know. Type it into the comments. Otherwise, if you have other feedback on ways to make this better, please feel free to email any of us who had emailed you to join us today, or go ahead and drop them in the comments of the YouTube. And we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.